Chapter 6. Richard, I'm home. Melody dropped her suitcase and her bag on the tile entrance of their apartment. Richard came out of the kitchen, through the beaded curtain of the doorway, carrying a steaming tray. I baked us a pizza for your supper, he said. How was your trip? The classes were really intense. I think I learned a lot, and I'm glad to be back home. Melody didn't want to remember what really happened in Vancouver. Maybe if she just didn't think about it, it would go away and not be real, she thought to herself. Hey, there's a special documentary on F-14s tonight. Richard was turning on the television channel. I'd rather watch a movie, Melody commented. But Richard didn't seem to hear her as he chomped down on a piece of pepperoni pizza. Melody was sitting beside him, but she didn't feel close to her husband. She took her pizza slice and nibbled at the end of it. Something felt different. She felt different. She felt guilty. Time went on. Melody threw herself into her job at PWA, Pacific Western Airlines. She worked and worked at home too, cleaning her apartment, cooking and baking. She tried not to entertain her emotional side, just put things behind her. But every now and then, Brent would communicate with her at work, and that would set her off again. She felt like she was living a double life. She was. At night she wasn't as cuddly with Richard as she used to be. He noticed it too. What's the matter with you lately? Richard demanded. You never want to have sex anymore, and you're so moody. I am not, Melody defended herself angrily. Why should I feel like having sex when you're never around? You're always working at the airport or doing something else important. You never have time for me anymore. She turned over in the bed as angry tears pricked her eyes. You're just a spoiled brat, Melody. I do everything for you. And for us, all my hard work. It's for both of us. Richard turned over on his side of the bed, and they both gave each other the cold shoulder all night, punishing each other by deliberately choosing not to touch toe or body part. Things just got more and more miserable as the weeks went by. Then one day, Melody looked at the calendar. That's funny. My period was due a couple of days ago, she thought to herself. She was very regular with her period, and she knew when to expect it, like clockwork. Suddenly, a horrible possibility began to dawn on her. No, that couldn't be. She dismissed the idea, but it began to nag at her brain. Melody thought every day, today I'm going to have my period. But nothing happened. Finally, after 2 weeks of sweating bullets, she decided she would have to go and see her doctor. She couldn't get an appointment for another week. Then finally, the appointed day arrived. Dr. Belmont was a youngish man with dark curly hair and a dark complexion. Right this way, young lady. Just give us your urine sample to Nurse Thompson, and we'll do the rest. Melody was directed into a cold, sterile bathroom. She sat down on the toilet and proceeded to get the sample as directed. This was embarrassing. It was messy, but necessary. She had to know. Deep inside her mind, she already knew. She just didn't know what to do about it. If she really was pregnant, she wouldn't be able to hide it from Richard because Brent was Fijian, and the baby would most likely have dark skin like he did. After giving the sample to the nurse, Melody went back to the doctor's office and waited for the result. Dr. Belmont came in with an open chart in his hand. We've done the test, he announced, smiling at her. I'd like to congratulate you, young lady. You're going to be a mother. Oh, no. Melody put her face in her hands and began to moan. And then she started to cry outright, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. Why, what's the matter, dear? Dr. Belmont came and put his hand on her shoulder. I know it must be a shock, but surely you and your husband will be happy about it in time. No, we won't be happy, Melody sniffled. There's something he doesn't know, and when he does, he won't be happy, she finished. Dr. Belmont removed his comforting hand from her shoulders. His facial features formed into a frown, and he tapped his forehead. Oh no, he thought to himself, not another one. Is there something you want to tell me, Melody? He coaxed, handing her some Kleenex. She began to twist the tissues in her fingers until they were just a tightly wrapped, wet mess. Yes, he thought to himself, this must be another one. Melody brokenly told her doctor the awful truth about her affair, and that she would not be able to hide the paternity from Richard because the child would look dark-skinned. All right, Melody. Dr. Belmont was writing something down on her chart. I see that you are between a rock and a hard place, so I'm going to offer you an abortion for this pregnancy. But you will have to get the signature of agreement from your husband in order for us to proceed. We will give you a therapeutic abortion as soon as possible. You are 11 weeks along today. His voice began to fade out of Melody's hearing at the word abortion. It kept repeating itself in her mind. Abortion? 11 weeks? Therapeutic? Melody took the form Dr. Belmont handed to her at the door. His demeanor seemed to have changed since she told him what she had done and what had happened to her. She walked mechanically out of the hospital across the grounds to her apartment, which was just a short distance away. What was she going to do? How could she tell Richard? Her whole life was falling apart at the seams. After spending a sleepless night tossing and turning, Melody decided to call her best friend Elsa and share her terrible secret. There's no one at the church I can talk to, she thought to herself. I can't tell my parents or anyone because they will all be so ashamed of me and it will ruin their lives. Elsa, can I come over for tea? Melody was calling her friend on the phone. She started to sound tearful. What's the matter with you? Elsa had noticed a change in her friend in the past few weeks. Ever since she had come back from Vancouver, she'd not been her usual bubbly self. Sure, just come on over. I'll put on a pot of red zinger tea for us. Melody took her sweater off the hook, her shoulder purse, and the car keys. She got into her little green gremlin, turned the key, and it sputtered into life. Not paying much attention to the road, Melody had a near miss as she left the stop sign for 18th Street. The other driver honked his horn and yelled obscenities out his truck window. By the time she was walking up her friend's steps, Melody was falling apart. Elsa's eyebrows flew up when she saw her broken friend sobbing at her door. Hey, honey, what's the matter? Come in, sit down. Elsa helped her friend to her kitchen table and lifted the tea cozy from her funny-faced teapot. She began to pour steaming mugs of savory brew in front of Melody's drooping face, spooned in some raw honey, and offered it to her friend. Summing up her courage, Melody forced herself to relate the events of the past couple of months to her best friend. Elsa listened, wisely choosing not to interrupt until Melody finished sharing. That was easy to determine because, once again, she began to sob uncontrollably. Oh, my friend, Elsa said soothingly. She gave Melody a hug. How do you feel about this man, Brent? I don't know, Melody sniffed. Well, maybe you should think about that. It seems to me that he wants to make a new life with you. Perhaps you should consider whom you would rather be with. You've been complaining a lot to me about Richard for a while now. You say that he never has any real time for you anymore. You know, you are very young, Melody. Maybe you made the wrong choice when you married Richard. Melody looked up searchingly at her friend. She hadn't thought in that direction at all. He's the father of your coming child, Elsa continued. Maybe it was your destiny. She let those words hang in the air a while. I don't know if I could do that, Melody responded. My family and everyone would have to know. They'd all have to know, and they would all disown me. Well, perhaps the abortion idea isn't such a bad one then after all, Elsa said. You only have so many choices, Melody. Melody went home feeling just as bad as before. She hadn't received any real help from her best friend, other than having someone to pour out her story to. Maybe she should give Brent a call and tell him about the pregnancy. After an uncomfortable night of tossing and turning, Richard still didn't know what was the matter with his wife. Melody decided to give Brent a call while Richard was away at work and tell him about the situation. "Hi, Brent," Melody said when he answered the phone. "Oh, hi, Melody. What a surprise to hear from you." Brent was friendly. "How's everything going?" "Not good, Brent," Melody began tentatively. "What? Are you all right?" Brent sounded concerned. "No, I've been feeling very badly lately. I'm nauseous in the morning and I cry a lot." There, Melody had said it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Brent let the hidden meaning of her words sink in. "You don't think, you're not..." "Pregnant, yes," Melody finished his thought. "It's your baby, Brent." Time stood still as the silence lengthened on the line between them. "Are you sure it's mine?" he said. "Yes, I'm sure. I've done the math over and over again. Ever since we had that night together, things have not been the same between me and my husband. I'm positive it's yours." "Melody, you have to have an abortion." Brent said the words distinctly. "It's the only way out of this. I'll help pay for it." Melody's mind began to whirl. She felt sick all of a sudden. "I have to go, Brent. I don't feel well. I'll talk to you later." She hung up the phone and was devastated. She walked to the bathroom sink, bent over and splashed some cold water on her face. Looking up into the mirror, she thought, "Who am I? What have I done? My life is ruined." Melody went to lie down on the waterbed and closed her eyes. "God, I'm such a sinner. How can you ever forgive me now?" She began to weep. After a while, she noticed their Bible lying on the night table. She decided to pen it. It just flopped open to the verse, which read, "Bad friends, bad company. Some of you shouldn't even call yourselves Christians." The verse seemed to get bolder and bolder as Melody stared at it. Then it looked like it became a neon sign. "I need to get some help." Melody got up and went to the kitchen. "I'm going to make a nice supper for Richard and tell him what's going on with me. It is not fair to keep things going like this." She opened the fridge door and took out a chicken she had purchased the day before. It was fresh and unfrozen. She turned the oven on to 350 degrees, put the bird in a roaster and in to bake. Then she got a bowl full of potatoes from the sack. She just kept on cooking and cooking until she had prepared a full chicken supper. The table was all set and ready for Richard when he came home from work. "I don't know how I'm going to get through this." Melody was beginning to feel ill again. She hurried to the bathroom and fell on her knees beside the toilet to throw up. Then she heard Richard coming in the front door. "Smells good. What's cooking?" Richard poked in his head in the bathroom. "Hey, are you sick?" "Yeah, kinda," Melody responded weakly. "Supper's all ready. Just wash up and let's eat, okay?" She washed her face and hands with bar soap. She looked down at the white foam lather on her hands. "How will I ever be clean again?" she thought to herself. She dried up with a towel. They both sat down to supper. Richard said the grace. Melody folded her hands, but she felt like such a hypocrite. "Some of you shouldn't even call yourselves Christians." The words from the Bible scripture repeated themselves in her mind. "So what's the matter, Melody? Have you got the flu?" Richard made conversation while relishing his chicken dinner. "Oh, I wish it was that simple," Melody thought in response. "No, it's not the flu," she stated aloud. "I went to the doctor the other day and he gave me a test." Richard was holding a big spoon of steaming mashed potatoes in mid-air. "What kind of test?" "A pregnancy test." "You're kidding, Melody?" Richard's face registered shock. Then he began to smile. "You're pregnant?" "Yes, I am," Melody said quietly, looking down at her lap. "That's great, honey. Is that why you've been so impossible these past few weeks? Is it a hormone thing or something?" Melody didn't respond. "Aren't you happy about it?" he pressed. Well, we weren't planning to get pregnant right now, Melody answered slowly. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a parent. She began to twist her napkin just like she had done in the doctor's office. It sure is a surprise, Richard retorted. It'll just take us a while to get used to the idea. I don't think I'll get used to it, Richard. I'd rather wait to have a family till later. We've only been married a few years, and we're still so young, she reasoned. But there's nothing we can do about it, Melody. Yes, there is. Melody looked at Richard and saw his smile fade and his dark brown eyes grow wide. You don't mean... The doctor said he can give me an abortion. Melody finished the sentence. Richard looked hurt and angry. He dug into his chicken and potatoes with force. He didn't look up for a long while. I can't believe you could even think of such a thing, he almost yelled as he stood up, scraping the chair back loudly. He stomped off and went upstairs. Melody waited a few minutes, looking at her untouched food. She had absolutely no appetite for this terrible discussion. She finally forced herself to go upstairs and found Richard sitting on the edge of their bed with his eyes red-rimmed. I have to tell you something, Melody forced herself, then finally said the words from hell. It's not your baby. Richard's head snapped back as though she had slapped him. His face turned a deep shade of red, and he began to shake. What did you say? Melody was trembling too. She didn't repeat the words. Richard saw the awful truth in her face as the realization sunk in, and he fell beside the bed on his knees. Oh, God, he cried. Through his tears, he said, You were the only thing that was mine, and now you're not. His tears fell and fell. It seemed like everything had frozen into a sculpture, and time stood still. Finally, Richard turned around to face Melody. His eyes narrowed as he said, You're going to have to choose between the baby and me. Melody knew he meant it. She'd been giving it a lot of thought for a while. Although she had feelings for Brent, she did not want to give Richard up, the man she had married and loved from her youth. The doctor said you should sign this release form and then they will do the abortion. Melody pulled a paper from her dresser drawer and offered it to Richard. I'm not signing anything. Richard almost spat out the words. I wash my hands of it, he continued angrily. He stalked out of their bedroom and almost ran down the stairs. Melody heard the front door slam shut and their car started up. He was going somewhere, away from her. She went downstairs too, with the release form still clutched in her hand. Then she took a pen from a desk and sat down and wrote a name on the paper. Richard Wolfe.